Ready? Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular Park Commission meeting of May 20th at Rebecca Hall. It is a hybrid meeting. This is a reminder to the public. The purpose of HARC is to preserve, maintain, and enhance the historic character, scale, and architectural integrity and cultural resources of the town and their historic land district. From town council staff, we have here tonight, roll call, Kristen and Darren, Piper, Michael, Allie. I don't know if anybody else is online. And then Elena from town council, welcome again. She's got to leave for just a little bit and she'll come back. And then we'll do our board recall, starting Sherry at that end.
Sherry Gordley,
Stacy Lake, Matt Lee,
Mark Shamba.
Bob Mather.
Andrew Williamson.
Okay. We'll go on to the minutes of the April 15th meeting. Who would like to approve that?
I'll move to approve the 4/15/2026 HARC draft minutes as written.
Second?
I'm out of it.
Mark will second, keep it going. And so we'll vote. Easy.
Stacy, yes. Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
And I'm going to move to approve our strategic planning retreat from March 4th minutes. Kristen has put those in. Hopefully you all read it. And I didn't see any changes. I did already talk to Kristen, and I just want to commend her that we only put kind of like the board's decisions in here, but there were two staff items. I just want to give kudos to. One, the staff was going to endeavor going forward to give 48-hour responses, even if you don't know the answer, but at least to respond to people. And then try to get the packets out Thursday nights, and except for this one time they've been doing that. So I want to thank actually staff for that. Otherwise, staff announcements.
Oh, we got a second and vote.
Oh, we got a second.
I'll second it.
All right, now we'll vote again.
Stacy, yes. Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
Okay, now staff announcements.
Sure. I don't have announcements per se, but I do want to extend my gratitude, appreciation for having a wonderful historic preservation staff team. So thank you to Darren Candelaria and Michael Owen for all the work they have done since we last met for historic preservation and supporting this community. It's been a pleasure to get to work as a team of three, and we have such a strong team to support your work in the years ahead. So thank you to them.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, public comment on non-agenda items tonight. If you have something not on the agenda, would like electronically raise your hand if you want to talk to us. And if none, then we'll go to the agenda. But electronically raise your hand if you're out there, you'd like to speak.
No hands raised, Mark.
Thank you, Piper. Okay, then we will go, the first item before I read it all, I think we have a recusal.
Yes, I have to recuse myself from the car hands project due to proximity.
Okay, take your food with you if you want.
Now? You got a.
We have an item before that.
Wait a minute,
You need a motion to.
why did I read that?
Carhen is the second.
What the hell? How did I get to page 2 already? Okay, I'm anxious. Sorry, Bob.
That's all right. I'll just get up when
So-
I'm ready.
First work session, basically was 214 South Fur. And I don't think I need to read the rest of the description since it's going to be continued, but I'll let somebody make the motion.
I'll do it. I move to continue the 214 South Burr project
Oh,
without discussion to the October 21st, 2026 HARC meeting.
I second that.
Stacy's recused, right?
Yes.
So, Sherry, you can vote.
Sherry, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
I'm confused too.
Oh, that's right.
That's enough.
Okay, thanks. So now the second work session.
I am recused and I'm gonna go hide in the closet over there.
Some people, you're going into the closet? Say anything else. Okay, we'll see you when you come out.
Yep.
Okay. This second work session is the Carhenge redevelopment project. It's consideration of an application for a work session on proposed new construction on town property pursuant to land use codes 5201C, legal description lots 34 and 34B in Bachman Village subdivision according to the plat recorded June 29th, 1979 under reception 212301, County of San Miguel. It's at 700 West Colorado. The parking lot, it's accommodations to the district. Owners, Town of Telluride. Applicant, design workshop. Staff member, Kristen Clothier. Kristen?
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I provided a detailed memo for this work session, and I will go through some high-level aspects of the project for you to consider as we have this conversation with the applicants this evening. So I'm going to skip over some things. Work session overview. So on September 17, 2025, there was an initial HARC work session on Carhenge. The applicant has incorporated comments received at the work session and from the public into what you're seeing now. Today's HARC work session is an opportunity for further conversation with HARC while the proposed project is still in the conceptual design phase, and the applicant is seeking guidance from HARC prior to taking next steps towards preparing and submitting a formal HARC application. Very high-level project overview. The project site is comprised of 2 parcels, which total 4.11 acres within the AC2 zone district. It's currently primarily a large public parking area. The 2 parcels are owned by the town of Telluride. The applicant's initiating the Carhenge redevelopment project to directly benefit and serve the people of Telluride by addressing critical and longstanding needs, including affordable housing, neighborhood-serving commercial uses, and expanded public amenities. The existing surface parking lot formed into a mixed-use pedestrian-oriented neighborhood. This is just high level, but consistency with the Telluride Master Plan and Southwest Area Conceptual Plan. The project stems from the community values outlined in Telluride's Master Plan and the Southwest Area Conceptual Plan, which was adopted by Town Council in 2021, outlining a comprehensive vision for revitalizing the southwest quadrant of Telluride, including the Carhenge property. The Southwest Area Plan identifies strategies for addressing key challenges in this area, including underutilized public land, traffic congestion, limited neighborhood amenities, and inadequate pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. Consistent with the goals and objectives of the master plan, the project aims to provide affordable housing, reduce car dependency, increase walkability, promote a sense of community, and contribute to a year-round economy that supports locals and visitors alike. So this is just that consistency piece before we move into the design guidelines. High level for HARC, I want to just mention that a formal land use code compliance review will take place following submission of a complete HARC application. Prior to the first work session, staff did review land use code requirements with the applicant extensively specific to the AC2 zone district to ensure the applicant is fully aware of land use code requirements and constraints. Also, just so that this group and the public are aware, the applicant has submitted a conceptual PUD application for consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission at a public hearing next week on 5/28/26, requesting specific variations to dimensional limits. Note that the PUD review and determination is within the purview of P&Z, not HARC, but still at a very high level. A brief summary of the proposed PUD that will be heard next week. As part of the proposed PUD, the project will provide a number of public benefits, including affordable housing and neighborhood serving small-scale commercial opportunities. The project also proposes to reduce building heights for buildings B and C along the San Miguel River below the maximum building height allowed within this zone district. And specific variations in dimensional limits requested include increasing the maximum building height above 40 feet for portions of buildings E and F, increasing the maximum ridge height above 45 feet for portions of buildings A and D, increasing maximum site coverage from 40 to 42%, and increasing maximum floor area above 30,000 square feet for buildings D and E. And again, if you're interested in hearing, attending that public hearing, it is next Thursday, 5/28 at 5:30 p.m. Now focusing on the work of HARC and what you have at hand this evening in this work session. As you know, and for the public's benefit, the overall precepts of the design guidelines are to keep it simple, keep it in scale, respect historic resources, and make all new design compatible with the existing context. During the work session, hang on, my screen is moving around. During the work session, the aim is to focus on the accommodations treatment area and River Park Corridor overlay design guidelines, this parcel falls within both, that are particularly pertinent at this early stage of project design. The primary focus is on mass and scale for this work session. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to put on the screen the specific design guidelines that apply to this project at this early preliminary stage for this work session that are most relevant within the accommodations treatment area and the River Park Corridor overlay. I'm then going to speak to some of staff's points on these specific design guidelines, but I will say that the full commentary from staff is included in your memo, and I'm just going to highlight some items as I go. So context compatibility. New interpretations of traditional building types are encouraged such that they are seen as products of their own time, yet compatible with historic resources in the vicinity. So what the applicant is doing, the architectural elements of the project bring forth a new interpretation of Telluride's mining vernacular. Viewers will perceive that the project is a product of its own time, consistent with the design guidelines. So we are outside of the Telluride Historic Landmark District. And so although general visual continuity is desirable in this treatment area, the design guidelines do allow for flexibility in the accommodations treatment area for finding an appropriate balance between natural constraints of the site and the built environment, and those play into this particular project. And then there are more comments on this topic in the staff memo, but moving on. Relationship to the town grid. The traditional street grid found in the core of Telluride is a key ingredient that visually knits the various neighborhoods together into an overall town image. So the design guideline is to respect the established town grid in all projects. Within this project, buildings A, B, C, and D express the established town grid. Building locations, street paths, and open space are aligned with this traditional street alignment. Building E is constrained by the steep topography directly south and is sited to follow contours and alignment at the base of the mountain. It would not be feasible to align this building with the established town grid. This building is furthest from the San Miguel River and the least visible from pedestrian and vehicular travel ways. So staff would just suggest that any further modifications to the proposed site map as this project works through the work sessions into public hearing and a full application should keep in mind the traditional grid to ensure compatibility. But staff supports the direction that applicants have gone in meeting that design guideline. Pedestrian scale. Provide visual interest on all facades and elevations that will be seen from streets, alleys, and pedestrians' ways, and talks about buildings stepping down, using decks, porches, bays, and balconies in combination with positive open space in the design. And I put this in here because it states in the design guidelines that this is especially important for large buildings and projects on large parcels such as this one. So I think it would be very helpful perhaps to request from the applicant, and they probably are intending to do this, but for them to provide some additional views from the pedestrian perspective from the river trail towards the project site, just to determine how the project will be perceived and whether further refinements are needed to meet this design guideline. But overall, the project sufficiently provides visual interest on the facades and elevations facing streets and pedestrian ways. The incorporation of additional porches and deck elements, especially for building A. So looking at that facade and its proximity to the trail, staff would suggest perhaps some additional work on that particular building to elevate its visual interest, perhaps to add some elements that break up the massing and have it step down towards in the direction of the trail, which is north. Addition of green space and landscaping, that positive open space, or within that open space right now, there's a street corridor, but adding some green space, some landscaping would improve that aspect of the project as well. So I described more fully in the staff memo, breaking up that wall plane for build. It's something that HARC may decide to discuss. Mass and scale, there are a number of design guidelines under AC 23 mass and scale that apply to this project. And I just pulled out the most important ones. And I'll just highlight a few of those, but they're all here on the next 3 slides and this slide. So use building sizes that will appear to be similar in scale to those found historically in town. And it talks about the heights of buildings should vary, but may increase closer to the mountains, as this project does. A primary building facade should not exceed 50 feet in width without a significant setback. So the primary facades should be differentiated if they are longer, such that they have significant setbacks in wall plane, create positive open space to enhance the streetscape, and really thinking about facade widths reflecting traditional lot widths. And you can look through that. They're just, would it be helpful, Mark? Let me ask you this. Would it be helpful for me to go through all the mass and scale design guidelines at a high level and then speak to some of staff's comments? Would that make this more efficient?
I think that frankly, we've all read it and we know if
Great.
you want to go to comments, and
We'll do that.
it's a work session, so.
It is. So just for the public, just so I can flip through these, but I won't specifically pull out specific elements per se. These mass and scale guidelines do apply to this project, and perhaps at a high level, 1 or 2 story elements at the sidewalks and alley edges, large lots being developed with several buildings rather than a single structure to reduce the perceived scale. There are more under mass and scale, the facades appearing similar in dimension to those seen historically, and dividing larger buildings into modules to reflect the traditional scale of construction. And finally, building form and breaking up larger buildings is again emphasized, and articulation of wall planes. So those are mass and scale design guidelines. And for staff analysis, the design guidelines do recognize that in this treatment area, accommodations, large-scale projects on large parcels may be built and provide specific guidance in these cases. Special importance is placed on the design of larger scale projects to ensure that they are visually integrated in mass scale and character with the neighborhood and the town. As seen from a distance, the projects should appear to be part of the community with essentially the same perceived street and alley arrangements, building forms, and scale of development. The applicant has done that here. The project is designed thoughtfully with respect to community character and fits well within the neighborhood context of this accommodations treatment area. The varied roof forms, breaking up of larger buildings into smaller modules, is compatible with proportions and forms found throughout town. The north facade of Building E may benefit from further articulation to break up the massing, break up the wall plane, and really that is the one form that seems like it could benefit from more work, perhaps during this work session, should HARC decide to pursue that. Larger buildings overall are divided into smaller articulated modules, reducing the perceived scale and breaking up the massing. And the project, the way it's designed to step up from the river, is really interesting. I think very well done by the applicant. So it's lowest at the river, and the applicant is actually constraining itself as it goes through the PUD process by having the height of the buildings closest to the river, the 2 buildings, be lower than the height that they could be. And then it steps up towards the mountains, and the design guidelines do speak to that height increase as you get towards the base of the mountain. So it's consistent with that concept. And then it's really reflecting the natural surroundings and the terrain as it puts forward its positive open space and its movement throughout the property. So just a few more design guidelines just for focus during the work session. Architectural character. Already talked about this. New interpretations of traditional building styles are encouraged. Pedestrian systems. So now we're moving into the River Park Corridor overlay. Some of these design guidelines are very similar to those of the actual treatment area, with some expansion due to the sensitivity of the river corridor. So there are just a few that I'm pulling into this meeting. RPC 3, pedestrian systems, providing that sense of pedestrian scale along the edges of the trail. So stepping down the scale of buildings along the trail edge, providing architectural and landscape that are at a human scale and encourage pedestrian activity. And I did speak to some thoughts about Building A. I've already spoken to that pedestrian aspect, and I'm sure you will work through that as a group. Within the River Park Corridor overlay, there's also a mass scale informed section. So really focused on buildings that are adjacent to the river trail being at pedestrian scale. building forms that abut the river trail should be 1 or 2 stories tall, noting that this project, the buildings do not abut the river trail, they are across the river, but I still think it's good to have a sense of the context of what we're looking for in that overlay, because the whole project, or part of the project is within the overlay. Facades or elevations should not exceed 50 feet in length along the river trail without a significant change in setback. Step down the height of buildings at property edges that abut the river trail and provide that articulation in wall planes. And it does talk about avoid tall building forms along the trail edge, which the applicant has responded to, and really trying to retain that sense of open space. So one thing that staff would point to, I think first I'm going to go back to the pedestrian systems because I don't want to miss this. The project includes community gathering, outdoor play, and seating dining areas that support that active passive recreation. And I think that's a really important element of the project as we discuss it. Pedestrian and bicycle pathways allow for that movement within the site and connect directly to the river trail and to the new Southwest Corridor bike and multi-use trail. So it's designed in a way that is very pedestrian friendly, bike friendly, and will allow those who reside there to set their cars aside and be able to enjoy this community with alternative transportation systems. And the parking, just thinking about pedestrian systems, I'm sorry, I'm going backwards, but it is important to state that the parking is designed to have minimal visual impact and really set back and tucked away so that the focus is really on that pedestrian outdoor open space environment. For this mass and scale piece, again, just ensuring that you feel as the HARC board that the mass and scale is appropriate, is broken up, steps back, and is perceived as the least mass possible from the river corridor perspective as you look at the project overall. And again, staff would suggest that the applicant has really given a lot of thought to that aspect of the project in moving this forward. And again, I speak to that building A as perhaps some additional work could be done in the design to improve the project to these design guidelines. Finally, the very last one I will mention here, building components and details. So minimize the intrusion of building components such as decks, patios into the River Park Corridor overlay treatment area. And I pulled up the ones pertaining to light spill. So deck railings should be solid panels to minimize light spill. Other designs will be reviewed by HARC on a case-by-case basis. So that's something, if they bring forth a different, you can review that case by case, but the preference or the direction from design guidelines are solid panels. And doors onto decks shall be no more than 2/3 light to minimize light spill. And other designs could be reviewed by HARC on a case-by-case basis. I'm not going to get into depth here. This is a work session. This is high level mass and scale, but I do think as the project moves forward, and perhaps it would help the applicant to touch on that topic now, because there is a lot of glazing and some adjustments and modifications that could be made before the full application comes in, so that that's not an issue further down the line. And staff would suggest you consider discussing that lightly during the work session, especially the windows facing north that could have light spill onto it in the direction of the River Corridor Trail. So I'm going to stop there. I'm just going to say that the requested action of this group, and this is for the public as well, HARC is requested to provide general feedback on the information options presented by the applicant in this preliminary conceptual design phase. HARC's review at a work session is not intended to vest the applicant or public with any reliance as the outcome of the formal development review process per Land Use Code Section 5201 C5. And I didn't bring any of the images into my presentation because I know the applicant is going to share everything with here this evening.
Okay. So any questions for Kristen? As the applicant start sharing your screen, I just was going to say, I thank you. We had one work session. It's rare that we have two, but I'm going to commend the applicant for bringing this one again. We got to get this right. And if we get some good feedback tonight, hopefully you can sail through in one shot. We'll see. Oh, and I did need to ask, did everybody read the letter that was distributed today? Public, okay.
Yes.
All right. So introduce yourself and you have the floor.
Okay. Share that again. Well, Kristen, that was such a great introduction. Thank you so much. You really, I think, outlined the project very clearly. So thank you for that. Hello, everyone. I'm Allison with Design Workshop. I've been working with Telluride staff on this land use application, and I'm excited to share this with you tonight. Online, we have some additional team members. Justin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Justin Hilbrecht. Is that the right name?
Yes, and he will be presenting as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Helmbrecht with Olson Kunding and happy to talk with you tonight. Thank you.
And we also have Becky Zimmerman with Design Workshop.
Hey, welcome all.
Thank you.
So, as Kristen mentioned, we are looking forward to sharing an update with all of you on what we've developed since our HARC session last fall. These updates meet many of the vision and goals as outlined in the adopted Telluride Master Plan, as well as the Southwest Area Plan. And we're excited to share these updates with you. So this is what you have in your packet. And what we will share tonight is a project that is broken down into several different buildings that will be built over several phases. The project is compliant with the land use code and actually does not maximize the full potential of the development for the site. And we're going to show this design that really carefully responds to the site and natural features. As Kristen mentioned, we've really thought carefully about how it connects to the river corridor as well as responds to the mountain context of this area. We will be seeking a PUD for variation in dimensional limitations and really want to think carefully about the public benefits that this project provides. We also want to make sure that we are thinking carefully about the HARC guidelines and the historic character and scale of the town and thinking about how that town grid fits into the context of the site. So the site, as you may know, is located at the existing Carhenge parking lot. It is currently 2 town-owned parcels that will be combined in a subdivision application later this summer. And we feel that this project really fits within the current context of the neighborhood of the Southwest area, kind of nestled between Cimarron Lodge and Telluride Mountain Inn. And we really aim to have it be this similar in character and kind of feel and sense of place as along Pacific Avenue. So this is our site plan, and really a key element of the site plan is to reduce the building heights and building mass along the river, and then think about those buildings really stepping across the site to buildings D and E that you see on the south, which are nestled into the slope of the mountain. And this really reduces the mass and scale and also preserves views. We have some illustratives we'll show you later that really celebrate the views into and out of the site. The buildings are oriented in relationship to one another to create active spaces between buildings. That was really important to us, is thinking about how the pedestrians move into and throughout the site. And that pedestrian circulation is really a key design element. So the buildings are designed to kind of reduce that sense of mass and scale as you're experiencing the site, so that as a pedestrian, it feels very comfortable. When you enter the site over the existing bridge, the view is focused towards the ski area through this central gathering space. And then the movement patterns are focused east to west across the site through a series of different pocket gathering spaces and this large central gathering plaza adjacent to the ski area that is hopefully a place where people can gather and mingle and come together. Another key design feature that Kristen mentioned is really separating the vehicular traffic from the pedestrian traffic to reinforce this sense of gathering and kind of the sense of comfort throughout the site. When it comes to the character of the site, it's really intended to create a sense of place, to create a neighborhood feel and service this community gathering area. So the elements within the site will really include places to rest, places to dine, places to meet with your neighbors, as well as fitting into the natural context of the mountain area and at the base of the ski resort. So we've really tried to select materials and features that fit within that natural sense of being in Telluride. We're really excited about what this character might bring. It's bringing a new life to this part of town, which is what was envisioned in the Southwest area plan. The materials also want to mirror the color and texture of the architecture. And so we're really utilizing natural stone, boulders, and trying to soften with wood features when appropriate, as well as pulling in different accent materials that mirror the character of Telluride. We're really thinking about the site materials as at the intersection of architecture and nature. Paving will be particularly important across the site. We'll utilize different paving materials to help define the spaces, define those pathways, using higher touch finishes in those key gathering areas. And with that, I'll pass it to Justin to talk a little bit more about the architectural components.
All right, thank you, Allison. Well, this is talked about a few times already throughout the introduction, but this site plan illustrates how Zone 1 and Zone 2 in particular orient themselves to the man-made assets of Telluride, specifically to the town grid and to other buildings along the treatment area, along Pacific Avenue, and then the San Miguel River from a nature standpoint. And then Zone 3 really orients itself, as Kristen mentioned, to the hillside itself and really nestles itself up against the hillside and reacts to nature in that way. So really this site is a confluence of both the aspects of nature coming together, the river and the mountainside, as well as the town grid. Next slide, please. All right, thank you. This is a section through the site. The river, just to orient you, is to the right and the hillside to the left. Again, this shows that buildings in Zone 1 and 2 have a mid-roof height at the 40-foot height of the land use code, but our goal is really to push down the buildings in Zone 1 along the river to have a much lower pedestrian scale and a smaller, softer scale against the river. And then as we move towards the hillside, the project rises up to meet the hillside. So you see taller building heights in Zone 3 where you see Building E. The project does use steeper roof forms to lower the perceived scale along the pedestrian edges and along the visible facades. What that means is that we do have some portions of the ridge that are above the 45-foot max ridge height, but are still allowed within the PUD allowed heights for the ridges. Next slide, please. This is a series of plans. In the upper left is the lowest level, working all the way down to the lower right, which is the roof plan. But what I really want to point out here is level 1 is our parking, largely our parking and commercial level. The parking garages are partially submerged, and I did want to note last time we met with you in September, you asked us about pushing those garages down a little bit farther, which we've done. But really what I want to point out is what happens when the buildings start growing and emerging into view, which you start to see on level 2 and 3, is that the buildings themselves really start reducing in apparent scale as they move upward into their form, really tying into the grid of the treatment area and the buildings along Pacific Avenue. Next slide, please. From a material standpoint, just really important to us as a team and specifically at Olson Kundig to have materials that relate to nature, that have a lot of verticality in their aspect, that patina and change over time. And what I really love about Telluride is I think that's been the ethos of the town forever. So we're not really bringing anything new into the town. It's an alignment of what we're trying to do here and what already exists into the town. Next slide, please. There's just some blow-ups of some materials we've talked about, perhaps cast in place board form concrete, the verticality of the proportion of the windows, corrugated metals that might patina throughout the project, and wood siding. I know a topic that's coming up a lot right now is how we might handle that with the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code that is coming up, and I know you all are talking about that. So we look forward to investigating that further as we move forward to the project. But again, the goal is really to have a set of materials that reflects nature and changes over time. Next slide. All right, so we're going to get into a series of visuals here for you. So this is a view looking across the San Miguel River. And I really love how this is starting to nestle itself in along the river edge, just kind of sitting very calmly in nature, the lowest scale of the project orienting itself to the river. And then you really see kind of the bigness of the mountain, the nature and the mountain side that's behind you as well. Next slide, please. This is an initial view of the entry bridge into the site, really accentuating the pedestrian and bicycle access into the site, finding ways to really make that more prominent over than, even more so than vehicular flows. I also want to, again, call out attention to, you see building B on the left side of the bridge, and its low 2-story scale. And then building A, which Kristen was talking about earlier, is on the right side of the bridge. It's starting to step down in its scale to the river on the north side as well. And then your eye is kind of drawn into the site, and we're seeing building D in the foreground. I also want to call attention to the lowest level of these buildings of A and D are really going to be activated from a commercial aspect. I know that's been an important topic to think about the vibrancy of this commercial and plaza fabric that's happening at the ground level. Next slide, please. All right, this is a view looking into that plaza that I was just mentioning. I do want to point out that we've removed some trees from this view so you can get a better view of the facade that's happening back on building E, which is the building on the right, and building D on the left. Again, at the base of both of these buildings on the plaza is envision commercial area. Next slide. And then finally, here is a view from the Lift 7 chairlift zone, looking into the project. I really love this because the buildings are starting to open themselves up to the big mountain views that are beyond, almost strengthening the relationship of this development to an area that the community is just really fond of. Also, the roof forms of building E on the right tie into the slopes of the mountainside. Again, our goal is to really nestle that building into the shape and form of what's happening against that hillside. And then, from the aspect of someone living in this community is in their units to have great visual connection to the outdoors from just a health and well-being standpoint. And, just to really wrap up here, our goal is to really create a sense of place, community, and neighborhood for this area of Carhenge that ties into the already existing fabric of everything that surrounds it, whether that's the orientation of the buildings to nature or to the town grid, to the mass and scale of other buildings that are in the treatment area, to the just beautiful natural features around us, and then again to materials that really tie into the verticality that exists throughout nature, and letting the buildings really respond from that. So thank you for listening to us today, and we would love to hear your feedback and have a conversation with you. Thank you.
Okay, and again, the beauty of this work session is we can really have a informal back and forth. And before we drill down with questions, I just want to set a format and make sure that we all understand. Could you go to page 8? And I realize same things on 15, but could you put that up there? And I had made some notes about this. I just want to look at two things on page 8.
Which,
sheet 8,
could you give me the
my
title of the page?
packet? Oh, the one that has,
Site
The
plan
site plan.
exhibit
Great,
P.
Thank you.
sorry. And I know it's on 16 also, but this one is easy to navigate. So I'm just gonna, real quickly, just to lay out the format before we go into mass and scale issues. I had marked down the height of each building and where the partial garage or some underground was, but if you could just help me on, we'll start with E. That's as it was last time, or I think you said, well, we're putting more of the parking underground here. Is that full level 12, 14 feet underground parking for the length of E and F, or how much is underground there? That's my question.
It's partially submerged
How far?
by, it really, I think the best way to look at it is at the section. You can see it, for the most part, it follows the existing grade, some of it falling just below in building E with it nestled towards towards the hillside, and more of it is covered as it comes into the hillside.
Yeah. So the shallowest part of that is only how tall? You look up at the ceiling.
Justin, do you have?
Sorry, could you reframe that for us, Mark?
Okay, I'm trying to figure out if I mean, I appreciate the fact that you've kind of ramped it into the hillside for this underground parking in E. And my question is, I was, of course, contemplating, since that's 40 feet tall, which maybe against the mountains higher, as you already acknowledged, higher buildings are probably more acceptable, but I mean, I'm just thinking, if you went 5 feet lower, this 40-foot heights, could be impacted. But how deep is that parking garage? And again, I know it's ramped into the hillside, so how can you?
I do want to, it's also more complicated than this section a little bit, because we're cutting through one moment. There are actually moments where this garage is more buried, especially as you get towards the eastern side of the site into the east side of building E and F. Those garages are buried at that point. The base of the garage is at 25 feet right now, is the base elevation of the lowest level of that garage.
So
Okay,
Mhm.
and the building's 40 foot tall. And then what about F?
F at that point, it's really submerged because the grade is so high when you
Oh, I
get into
see.
that corner of the site. I mean, the site is really quite, we're cutting through, you can kind of see in the plan in the lower right
Yeah.
where the section is cut. It's cut very central to the site. As we
Okay.
move east to the site, more and more of the garage is buried. But again, we're able to fit these buildings into the building height that the land use code allows for.
Well, if we assume we're gonna max it out on purpose and intentionally, no matter what, but, okay, so that settles the 40-foot height of these, and about half of underground parking, or half is underground on E, and then as you move east, it's like you said, almost 100%. D is a 40, this is my primary concern. Building D is a huge mass, 74,000 feet. How much of that parking is underground?
Again, it's kind of partially submerged, fully submerging a garage is difficult from an efficiency standpoint because of the length of the ramps. But again, I just want to call attention to building D, the mid-roof height is at the 40 feet of the land use code.
I wrote down building B was 45 feet, or Kristen's memo said it was 45 feet at the top.
The ridge height goes above that 45 feet in some locations due to the
Okay.
steepness of the roof. But I do want to say buildings A, B, C, and D are all within the 40-foot mid roof height measurement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and so those cars are ramped in, and it's about half underground.
Mhm.
There's no real hillside there. Can you just clarify that?
Yeah,
Partially,
partially. That's pretty accurate. It's pretty flat in that portion of the
yeah.
site.
But again, I was thinking that you were coming back after our directive that this would, on this building D anyway, that it might be a full underground parking garage, but that's not what it is.
No, partially submerged, partially submerged.
And then same with B and C and A. I guess they're all partially, well, no, on B and C, are those just outdoor parking spots or are they partially under?
Those are
Yep.
Sorry,
tuck under parking.
it's what?
It's tuck under parking.
Yeah, okay. And then I appreciate the fact that you did, and those are 35-foot tall. I can't figure out why they're 35-foot tall because it says it shows 2 stories. It seems like along the river, well, facing the river trail, and I think I heard you kind of acknowledge it might not be that high. On B and C, 35 feet.
Yeah, you could, yeah, it's right at, it's hitting at about 35 feet right now. You can see the mid height line of 40 feet on building D. You could imagine drawing that across.
Okay,
We do have kind of that dashed portion in the middle of building B and C there that pops up a little bit. But for the most part, we're keeping it as low as we can along the river.
okay, thank you for setting the stage, and then we'll get into detailed questions, I guess, now, and whoever would like to start.
Could I maybe just ask some questions since we were talking about parking? How do you intend, is that going to be fully enclosed parking? So as a pedestrian, as you're walking along, are you going to be seeing into the parking garage or is it going to be enclosed? Which I know needs to be a different type of parking design since you have to have air circulation and whatnot. What's the intention there?
It's intended to be fully enclosed, correct, Justin?
Yeah, I think we would like to visually screen it, but it's a great question from a mechanically ventilated versus naturally ventilated parking garage. That's probably an answer that we don't know at this time.
Good question. Others?
I'll go next. I kind of had 3 overarching comments. The first being, I think we're being asked to do quite a lot of imagining here. The floor plans are very small. We certainly can zoom into them, but they're very diagrammatic, which is not necessarily a problem at this stage, but going forward, obviously we want a great deal more detail. A lot of Mark's questions right out of the gate. There'll need to be height calculations for each building. And when I say building, building D appears to be 4, and I think that's appropriate. But I think there needs to be a way to talk about each building because the height calculations for each building. I mean, I know they're attached with a parking garage underneath. So per the building code, it's a single building. But identifying the highest point relative to pre and post grade, it's going to have to be a lot more deliberately annotated.
So when you said 4, you mean 4 stories?
No, it's broken up into 4 separate above grade. It
4 pods,
appears
okay.
to be 4 pods.
Pods.
To the pedestrian, to the person navigating the space as a pedestrian, it's 4 buildings.
Yep.
They're not going to get into the building code and decide it's only a single building.
Yep.
Similarly with E, so anyway, I just think there needs to be a great deal more documentation, and I'm only saying that. I know that will come. But as a result, I think a lot of and maybe this will echo through everyone else's comments, maybe not, but I'm basing my comments essentially off of 3 renderings, which a couple of them are then repeated, and some, again, very small floor plans.
I agree with that.
With that said, I did find the rendering that was shared, the view from Chair 7 is actually quite helpful. I wish that rendering would have been in our packet because you can then see how the 5 stories of building E do articulate above grade by and large. The 5th level is very small up at the top of the ridge, but I see 3 panes of glass and then what I imagine is the parking garage below that. So here we really do start to see the 5 stories articulate themselves. So again, that's kind of my first overarching. I don't want to have to imagine or guess. You've obviously got this modeled, putting some elevations and some more documentation on our in the packet. the next round. Like I said, I think that'll come, but it would have been helpful. We could have been a lot more specific this time around. The second thing I wanted to say, I think there has been a great deal of effort, at least in plan view, to articulate the wall planes. I can see that in the renderings, and I can certainly see that in the floor plans when I zoom into them. There's been less of an attempt, I feel, at shifting those wall planes vertically. In the first rendering, or the view from Tomboy Bridge, you go across that bridge, you're staring at a 4-story wall plane. I think that needs to be articulated vertically with more stepping back of the upper levels, more decks and things of that nature. I am going to be continually concerned with the length of the ridge line of building E. I don't know how many feet that ridge is, but it's got to be pushing 100 feet. The result of the dormers being such wide sheds is they almost cease being dormers. They're almost individual roofs. And I just think some of those roof planes are in the view to community plaza and park rendering. I don't know how many hundred of square feet of roof we're looking at there, but it's substantial. It's because it's a result of the roof pitch being fairly steep, which I do appreciate. I appreciate that these aren't just flat roof buildings, but I don't think the way the dormers are used, it doesn't break up that roof for me enough. They just become other roofs, if that makes sense. Those are my three things. I reserve the right to have a fourth or fifth later.
Okay. Who would like to next?
I'll jump in. I agree with everything that Stacy said. The work session, but the sort of lack of documentation makes it hard for us to kind of give you more concrete opinions about things. The primary things I'm focusing on at this scale, it should be mass and scale, I appreciate the effort to break up the individual buildings into smaller components, but these are still very massive buildings, probably the biggest buildings in town. It's really hard to tell that without a larger plan comparing this to the town grid. And I don't think the design guidelines would have ever contemplated buildings this large. So having this first or second level plinth, I can't quite tell on some of the documentation what we're looking at, whether or not that's going to be successful to take, say, building E, which I think is also connected to building F through the parking garage, to take that and make it feel like multiple buildings. Are you going to be able to do that with connecting them all on the ground level or the second level, or if this is a below grade garage? It's, again, difficult to tell with the documentation. So I'm concerned about just the overall footprint of these buildings and the mass and scale of these buildings. And I think in general, it seems like the buildings are a story or half a story too tall. I think there was a comment earlier about this meets the land use code, but you're applying for variances to the land use code. So it doesn't seem to meet the land use code without the variances. So I think I would like to see the height reduced on the entire project significantly, a story or half a story. And I'd like to see more documentation of the way that you're articulating the elements of the buildings as they arise out of the plinth or the ground, to prove to us that it's successfully breaking up the mass and scale, so that the public and the pedestrians see these or experience these as smaller buildings, because right now they're massive buildings.
Okay. Who else?
I just have a couple of basic questions. So according to your site plan exhibit C, just did some basic math and looks like the parking square footage comes out to a little over 53,000 total. I'm just curious. I know certain things get in the way of trying to calculate how many parking spaces that is, but do you have any idea how many you'd be able to fit in that total square footage? And I'm assuming from adding all those up, that's everything combined? Like from all the different buildings?
Yeah, we're working through. Oh, go
So-
ahead, Justin.
Yeah, it's around 220 stalls. But yes, we're working through that to make sure that the parking requirements meet the land use code.
And just for, so like, everything that's already been said about how, how difficult this is for us to give you enough feedback, just because we're having to imagine a lot of things. So going back in between the open space corridor between building D and E, do you have a rough idea of kind of the width that is open space in between those buildings?
Are you speaking of the more tan area or the green area?
It's green. Initially,
Yeah.
the previous work session, you had some trees. Now it's a lot more open. So on the west, it's wide, and as it goes to the east, it starts to get reduced in width a little bit.
I think this view really showcases how the orientation of the buildings here is intended to kind of open up with views to the mountain and frame views to the mountain behind.
Right. And I'm just trying to get, so it looks like from there, it looks like a lot wider than what it kind of does when I'm looking at it on Exhibit C. And I'm just trying to get an idea in my head, since there's not enough documentation here, like just what we're working with, just helps me understand the scale of the project overall.
Yeah. We can certainly provide that. But I don't know it off the top of my head.
Yeah, if we were to go to the site plan again, and I do just want to point out that the site plan and the renderings do match each other, is that just as a frame of scale, I was kind of initially asking of the tan area. I was wondering if you were talking about between the D buildings, and just for scale, that's about 20 feet north to south in between the little pods of the D building, just to help frame
Thank
scale.
you for clarifying that too. That's very helpful.
Yeah, so that gives you an idea that green space is actually, quite large, especially on the west side.
Yeah. And would you think that's also an appropriate calculation for the west and east side of building E?
Yeah, that inner, let's call the inner courtyard open space that we're using for circulation is about 20 feet in both building D and E, as they're split into their pods.
Okay.
I do actually have some other questions.
No, you're good. I'm just.
Are you done?
Just asking some basic questions. Just looking at all the different buildings that have commercial spaces, do you guys have a rough idea of how many actual commercial units that you're proposing here?
I don't think we know that at this time.
It really depend on the tenant.
Yeah.
Sherry?
Yeah, I think one thing that seems possibly concerning is if you're looking at on this view, building E and building F, they're both very tall buildings, and they kind of extend into what's now a very kind of narrow green space between Mountainside Inn and the Telluride Trail. It looks like, first of all, the Mountainside Inn is only really 2 stories high, that southern building there that's in the southwest corner of the Mountainside Inn lot. And that's going to be it looks like just a few feet from a very tall, 4 or 5 foot structure. And I think that that's a lot of massing to be stuffing into that little corner of the building. And it's also really going to crowd Mountainside Inn. Another thing is it looks like there isn't a lot of accessibility, at least for pedestrians to building F, especially with that very much pinch point there between building E and the Mountainside Inn building. So it seems like the circulation there could perhaps be improved. And also just maybe stepping down that east side of building E at the very least, just to provide at least a little bit of light. That whole face, that whole southern face of that southern building of Mountainside Inn is all windows for the rooms there. So I think having that large structure there is really going to be distressing, possibly inappropriate. I agree also, I think in the comment had been made in the September work session about the north face of building D as you cross the bridge, and really sort of stepping that down to a pedestrian scale, I think would be appropriate, and maybe put some landscaping there as well. And then also just, I know we're talking mostly mass and scale, but Mark gave me this nifty HARC pen, and I know one of the values is efficiency. And so just for the efficiency of design and whatnot, I think it might be appropriate for us to talk a little bit about the materiality and the glazing. As far as materiality is concerned, I know that you have some vertical unfinished sort of, I guess, barn siding type of materials, and the design guidelines do specify that materials should be painted or stained. And also with respect to the corrugated metal roof, that's typically not a roof material that's used on anything but, well, the only thing in the design guideline that talks about corrugated metal roofs is for secondary structures. So I don't think that's typically a material that's used, especially for larger buildings. And as far as the windows are concerned, I know, and using just as an example again, that north face of building D, as you enter across the bridge, it has basically a 3 or 4 story, just solid glass, I guess 3-story, just solid glass panels all the way up. And that's certainly, if you read some of the window provisions in the design guidelines, even though it does ask for vertical emphasis, it also talks about the proportionality of the glazing to the wall plane, or the percentage of glazing with respect to the wall. And I think that a lot of those windows, even in the residential units, seem overly large as well.
Okay. Others? I'd like to recap, maybe then that'll spoke some comments, and then we're going to have public input. But actually, let's get public input first, and then, yes, I'd like to come up one at a time to the microphone and read your name, and would ask for less than 3 minutes, please, each.
Hi, my name is Kristen Permakoff. I'm here as a private citizen. I was on the Zoom meeting and I raised my hand. I had some questions earlier, but it didn't work out. So I drove across town to catch the meeting in person. Thanks for having me. Thanks for reviewing this. I think affordable housing and rental housing is really important to the town. I think within the community, there's been quite a big question about when the voters get to vote on the use of this lot. And I know that's not HARC purview, but just in the bigger picture, this might be the cart a little ahead of the horse. I understand the SWAT plan was a guide. And that's one thing. Relatively size speaking, how big is the school? How does this project compare to the size of the school, the high school? That would be a question I had. And that's all for right now. Thanks.
Hi,
Hi, my name is Madeline Whiteman, and I'm very concerned with the mass and scale of this project. Um, I think you talked about that part of one of the criteria was relationship to the town grid. Looking around Telluride, I don't see a project this large that doesn't have a 2-lane highway or 2-lane road between the buildings or a river corridor. It just seems like there's so much put in this small space. It was mentioned that some walkways would be 20 feet. 20 feet with 230, 250 units. That's not going to be a lot of space. I don't know if you've taken into consideration, you're putting in very steep roofs. So roof shedding, how is that going to affect any of the walkways? It just seems to be that you're taking up too much space for buildings and not enough space for open space. That this area of town has had a lot of open space, has had the river corridor, has had streets to come between the different large projects, and none of them have been this large. And also one of the things about the walkways being so narrow is in the wintertime, there's not going to be any sun in any of those walkways. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration too with the design of these buildings. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got some hands raised online.
Yeah, let's go online and we'll start. I see 4 in a row. I'll just start at the top. Kathy Neff, can you unmute and please 3 minutes or less?
Hi, thank you. It was very good presentations. And I have 2 items. First of all, as far as decreasing by 1 story or so on any of these buildings, I have concerns because it seems like the primary goal was to provide affordable housing to decrease any more units or space for that purpose seems counter to what the town of Telluride is trying to achieve to provide affordable housing and to provide more units. Second of all, I'm concerned about Mountainside Inn, and I believe they have a certain amount of parking spaces because they have very limited parking within their 4 buildings. And I'm wondering, has there been any thought or accommodation to provide parking spaces for the Mountainside Inn guests? That's all.
Probably the answer to that is no, right?
Yeah,
Mountainside Inn parking. Yeah.
well, it's not part, it's, we'll look into it, but we're meeting the parking requirements for this project. And there'll be a comprehensive approach to parking with looking at the 2 sites.
Okay.
But for this project, we are meeting the code.
Lou Holland. Go ahead and unmute. Welcome.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to comment. I am here as a member of the Chair 7 Community Coalition and just wanting to make sure that everyone knows we're still involved and interested in the project. We submitted some materials expressing our concerns at the last work session for both the Car Hinge project and for the parking lot planned on Shandoka. These comments apply to both, so rather than read them twice, I'll just read them once. And they apply to Shandoka as well. Overall, our concerns are still the impact that these projects will have on our little quiet residential end of town, and we want to make sure that the scale and character are taken into account. The uniformity of the current design doesn't go far enough to create the impression of a larger number of smaller buildings. We're still very concerned about the size of the proposed buildings on both Car Hinge and Shandoka, specifically the height and density, and with Car Hinge, the proximity to the mountain, which has already been discussed tonight. We're not opposed to seeing neighborhood, commercial, and residential housing, but we are concerned about the plans to the extent that they're very ambitious in scope. And the buildings that are planned for the nearest side of the mountain are going to require a lot of excavation, which will impact that space We really want to emphasize that preserving the perimeter and the natural open pastoral feel of these parcels that makes the location so special needs to be re-looked at overall. So thanks for hearing me out tonight. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Doug Sanders.
There you go. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, Doug, welcome.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry, calling in from Australia. I have a question comment on size and scale. I've been at all the stakeholder meetings, both this and the Shandoka project, and it seems overwhelmingly unpopular based on its size and scale. And one of the questions I asked at Shandoka, which I think is appropriate here, is if we can pick this project up and place it on another community in town, say on a block on Colorado Avenue between Fir and Pine, and just see how big these projects are in relationship to another commercial zone, just to get a sense of how big these things are. And I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Watch out for sharks. Okay. Molly, Herrick. Can you unmute?
He is unmuted.
Go ahead, Molly. Hello?
She's unmuted, but doesn't seem like.
Can't hear you, Molly. I don't know if you can hear us. Any advice, Piper?
Skip Molly and come back to her at the end of public.
All right, we're going to come back to you, Molly, while you're maybe exploring your particular computer there and how to. Ryan Vitt. Ryan, can you unmute? Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with all the public comment as well as all the HARC comments. And I think if Design Workshop, if they take the HARC comments into advisement and the public comments into advisement, if it's possible to dramatically reduce the size of this project, I mean, it could be such a great asset for Telluride. And I think, just my first thought is you think, okay, if there's 230, 240 units and say the average is they're generally 2 bedrooms, I would guess there's going to be at least 200 bikes, possibly up to 300, 400 bikes. There's nowhere on this site where I don't see where bikes would be going. I don't know where the trash is going. It looked like one area that might be a turnaround, but like if you have 500 people in this project, you're going to need a large trash area. I mean, I like the idea of the commercial kind of, on each side of this entrance point, from walking from Pacific over the bridge. I do think there's a pedestrian, I think Park already mentioned some additional landscaping, which would be nice. But I do think the sidewalk on the left side as you're looking over the bridge would be more beneficial on the right, since that's really more the flow of kind of flowing towards lift 7 and then through the commercial areas. So I don't know if that's adding an additional sidewalk or switching the sidewalk. But I do think, and I guess an additional concern on top of that would be the number of cars. I mean, you got to figure there's got to be at least, 240 cars. Even if there's half of those 120 coming in and out per day, there's going to be that blind corner kind of rounding building A there, I believe it is, or building B, that first one to the left. So I think there's going to be a decent amount of traffic there. And right now, yeah, pedestrians kind of walking there. I think it's right now, to me, I see it as being an issue. Whereas if you move the pedestrians to the right side and maybe open up that corner a little bit, maybe solve that problem a little bit. So that's really more, my take on the current situation. Thanks.
Thank you. Josh Bunch. Hello, Josh. You want to unmute?
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity. I don't necessarily have a whole lot new to say outside of to echo, I think, the comments by HARC and I think the majority of the public, I think the size and scale just seems massive. And I think that if you listen to all the opinions here, it sure seems like unless this is dramatically scaled back, we will negatively impact the experience of anyone visiting this area of town or anyone living in this area in town that enjoys what it currently represents today. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And then back to Piper, who'd we lose?
Molly, but she lowered her hand.
Okay. Any other public comment? We want to leave you with specifics, and I know you want it, and so I'm going to try to recap here, but any board member can jump in. I captured 9 items. But let me just start out with the elephant in the room. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Madeline Whiteman again. I just wanted to ask you at the beginning of the presentation, there was a mention of this being done in phases. Could that be expanded upon? What are the phases?
As far as construction sequence? I don't know.
We don't have that information, but it will likely be phased.
Yeah. Start against the mountain and work your way out, but whatever. So, first of all, I get the challenge that the applicant has here. I mean, to have buildings that, and I'm going to walk it and measure it, but I think are longer than the school, as somebody asked. But that's up against the hillside and there aren't any other buildings there. And now you got this series of all these buildings and D might be longer than school, but I don't know. You guys know, you can tell us now, but I'm going to find out before the meeting. But I think the elephant in the room is there's no use dribbling into this. I think Matt said it. I mean, the whole project needs to, and I think it could be accomplished by underground piping or parking and complete underground parking to a great extent. It could be accomplished. And that's not half underground. And so you have to use raft foundations. The water table here is probably around 4 or 5 feet, just like it is down in Shenandoah. 20 or 30% of this town does raft foundations when they're in this kind of area and appropriate dewatering. Why not here? So I think, again, if I'm going to recap all 9 items, but I think that's the one biggest takeaway from our board, from the public, and from the last meeting. There have been a lot of positive, changes, I think, but we got to get by. I mean, otherwise it's continue, you're going to get continued. So I had 9 items. One was to break up the 3-story facades, changing wall planes, not just porches and decks. Remember in the 24 guidelines, when we redid it, we made and reinsured that you had to have change in wall planes. Just decks and balconies by themselves no longer did it, to break up, especially 3- and 4-story wall planes. We asked for more detailed floor plans. I had trouble discerning this too. And we got several architects. We're all trying to put it together. So please, if you would, when you come back, I don't see how this board is going to approve 5 stories in E. Even if you go on completely underground, I don't personally see it. Somebody can jump in if you say, well, too soon to tell. I don't know, but I don't see it. I mean, our guidelines only go to 3, and then we have one general guideline, which we root about 4 in some certain circumstances. So I don't even know what 5 means. It's not in our nomenclature in Telluride, Colorado. Albeit it doesn't matter if you have a PED. And I've got something to say I'll just say that now. About 5 years ago, because it was always the purview of P&Z to grant, and it is, PUDs. But we came to agreement, and it's memorialized, that if you get, I don't know why you would need a 45 feet, because already we're talking way out of scale, but if you get a 40-foot PUD approved by them, it is strictly up to HARC. How much of that building goes to 40 feet? Could it just be an elevator overrun? Could it be half the building? I don't know. We'd have to see the design. But it is this board's purview. So just because you say you get 45 feet doesn't mean you're going to have a building that goes 45 feet for 2 football fields long. And most people here know that. We talked about the wall planes, breakup. Stacy, I want to make sure I get the words right. Was it on E, reducing the dormer size, or what is it that you said?
Well, I thought about it more, and it's gonna be hard to put it into a succinct little 5-word sentence. The challenge here is these are large buildings, and I appreciate how simple they are. However, at the scale they are, that simpleness does nothing to reduce the perceived mass and scale. So there just needs to be more articulation. And I've been reading the guidelines here about how dormers should be used sparingly and with restraint and But I'll bring up the images that the applicant has in their packet, and that's the only reason I'm bringing them up. But if you look at the bird's eye view of the adjacent projects that they included, the roof forms are much more articulated. And that then carries down the facades and the wall planes and everything. I think there just needs to be, now there's a fine line. It can get too busy and overdone, but we're nowhere near there here. They're very simple. And in a smaller scale building, that would be laudable, but because these are so big, they need to be broken up more.
Okay.
So you fit that into 5 words and
got the drift. Number 6, maximize the building E appearance of separate buildings. I mean, that's just, like I said, it might be twice the length of the school, but we'll see.
I want to chime in there. So AC 23 mass and scale, AC 23A, use building sizes that will appear to be similar in scale to those found historically in town. So in the town of Telluride, not a mine outside of the town of Telluride. A2, as seen from the mountains, buildings should also appear to be similar in scale with the town core and with structures in the warehouse commercial treatment area. So to me, what that means is the AC2 is recognizing there will be larger buildings. And to me, A2 is sort of setting a max of those on the size of the historic large buildings in the warehouse and commercial treatment area. I think these modules, as they've been broken up, need to reflect that scale.
And thanks for referencing those guidelines, because it might help to fast forward. Number 7 is, in general, buildings need to go down 1 to 1.5 stories. You know, that's numerically what I wrote down, even though that's how I gave this introduction. That's the elephant in the room. And underground parking seems to me be the only, if you don't want to lose units, seems to be the only way to accomplish that. And
I mean, do you have anything of this being a public benefit without any public parking? But the parking's just for the residents there, and there's not anywhere for the general public to park? And I feel like in all these projects, this is like one of our biggest concerns is fighting the subterranean parking. And from Voodoo, from Canyonlands, it's been on every one of them. And I feel like this one, it's all coming to a head. And this is as important as any of them because of how large it is and the impact it'll have on the project overall.
and the commercial spaces.
And the commercial space. And it would be really nice to, I know what's the domino effect and what's supposed to go down the road with Shandoka, but man, I think it'd be really beneficial as a public use to have some spaces there for the general public too.
Okay. Materials, Sherry brought up painted, stained, corrugated roofs are for accessory buildings only. Reduced glazing, I mean, it's general comment. This is Sherry made. So that's 9. Does anybody have a number 10? And I guess we'll split.
Yeah, I had basically the circulation around buildings E and F.
Okay. You mean increase the,
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's, I mean, there might be a little path to get to building F, but it's not apparent.
thank you, Sherry.
I mean, what about, do you guys have a plan for like snow removals? Is the drive gonna be heated? Just thinking like where you're gonna push all this to store it?
Yeah, snow storage will be addressed in the plan.
A lot of snow.
Yeah, well, those trucks tear that pavement up quick too.
Okay, good comments. So we have given you 10 ideas, but they're not really just ideas. We ask you this time, before you come the first time, we are all for accelerating this for the crisis, not just care about affordable housing. So basically, if you did what we said on 1 through 10, I don't even understand how we'd have to go to a second hearing, but that's in your court now and very respectfully. And so we hope we can work together to accelerate this, okay?
Great, thank you so much for your comments.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Well, we have finished our work sessions.
Reached out to renew.
Well, we have one withdrawal. Would anybody like to just read the introduction to it and make a motion?
I'll read it. The project title is Shandoka Lot Redevelopment Project. It's consideration application for work session on proposed new construction on town property. And it has been withdrawn.
Okay, we weren't asked to continue this till June and then they're coming in June, Shenandoah?
It's getting just as if the application wasn't submitted and then they'll resubmit.
Okay. Just intellectual curiosity. How many more months before it's coming? We had work session several months ago. They just left. I don't know.
I'm not, I can't speak on behalf of the applicant as to when they'll
Okay,
submit.
don't worry. Okay, so now, Kristen,
Sure.
take over.
Sure. Big thanks to Mark and Sherry and the three other members of our subcommittee. That's HARC and P&Z. So Angela Dye, Todd, and Sherib are all part of that group. Oh,
Yep.
yes.
Hey, Bob.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Do you want to take a 1 minute break?
Well, you can give the introduction.
Is that okay?
And Bob will be, he'll catch it. He happens to live with the woman who led most of the discussion about our subcommittee.
Okay.
I wonder if they talk trees.
I wonder. Okay, back to where we were. So we have a subcommittee. The subcommittee has met 2 times since we last met as a full HARC board, and made a lot of progress. I'm going to focus this evening on the historic preservation variance to the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code, and then further work is being done at the full P&Z on updates to our tree ordinance for the town, incorporating all the input from that subcommittee. So I'm just going to pull up a few slides. Okay. And our most recent meeting was quite recent, so I'm hoping that I incorporated a number of the comments from the group, but this will get refined and also shared with P&Z. What I'm looking for is input from the full board. Again, this incorporates input from the subcommittee over 2 meetings, and then hopefully a recommendation that you would give me to town council to bring this forth in June. I'm hoping for the same thing from P&Z. I'm focused on the tree aspects as well, so that the full board, the full town council is getting a recommendation from each of our full boards for this movement forward, which are changes to the land use code. So starting here, again, focus on historic preservation variance. So based on our subcommittee meetings, after the first subcommittee meeting, I drafted language, received input from the subcommittee, and this is where we are now. I'll just kind of walk through this and see if you have further input, changes, ideas for how we can make this what we wish it to be. But I'm hoping that this group will be able to move fairly quickly forward towards a recommendation to adopt this change to the code. Because the CWRC gets implemented on July 1st, I'm trying to time things, and that's why we went to subcommittee to do a lot of the work. So generally, local jurisdictions may issue variance-based exceptions to the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code for historic resources per CWRC Section 1029. This historic preservation variance is being established by the town of Telluride pursuant to CWRC Section 102.9.1. So this is just the beginning of the proposed changes to the land use code, or addition to the land use code. A1, variances may be issued for the repair, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or restoration of structures listed in or preliminary determined to be eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, contributing or supporting resources within the Telluride Historic Landmark District, and or properties designated as historic under a state or local historic preservation program. So now we're going to get into more specifics. Again, you'll remember from one of our previous meetings, the state kind of broadly says that each jurisdiction may choose to implement a variance process that could be partial variance, full variance. or decide not to implement that piece of the CWRC. So we are implementing that and providing the structure and guidance for the town of Telluride. So scope, an application for a variance from the provisions of the CWRC for historic preservation is only required in cases where the scale of the proposed project meets or exceeds one or more thresholds for applicability of the CWRC. In no instance is a variance required for proposed projects that are not subject to regulation by the CWRC, pretty obvious. So now we get into more of the details. So I have a section on criteria and a section on standards. There used to be more subsections, but I've kind of distilled it down based on our last meeting, and we'll see if this meets what we think is a path forward, and we can adjust in any way during this conversation and work session. So the aim is this is the criteria. The aim is to minimize the loss of historic materials and uphold historic preservation goals while balancing the needs to protect the historic resource from wildfire. As such, variances shall only be issued upon determination that all of the following criteria are met. A variance will support the historic preservation goals of the town of Telluride. The proposed repair, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or restoration will not preclude the structure's continued designation as a contributing or supporting structure. The variance is the minimum necessary to preserve the historic integrity, character, and design of the structure while remaining consistent with the intent of the CWRC. Full compliance with the CWRC may compromise the historic designation of a contributing or supporting structure, and failure to grant the variance may result in negative and/or irreversible impacts to the contributing or supporting structure. The project prioritizes reversible interventions in cases where steps must be taken to harden historic structures, protect against wildfire, and there is good and sufficient cause to issue a variance. So this is sort of the criteria that we'll have to go through, and I'll get into which reviewing body reviews which projects momentarily. But I would like to discuss, I simplified, I reduced, I moved some parts around to make it clear that these are just the criteria, and do we feel that we're comfortable with all of these being met in order for us to then issue that variance?
The only change I have in my
Sure.
notes from our meeting, Kristen,
Thank you.
where we added contributing, supporting,
Ah,
and non-contributing with qualifications, which and Darren said we should just use the word designated.
thank you so much. I missed that in making these edits, but absolutely that's
Okay,
something
and-
the subcommittee is recommending, and I can type that in
I'm not trying to drag this out.
right now.
but
Yeah, no, for sure.
We had quite a dialogue about accessory structures. And
Yes.
then Sherry remind me, I think that we said if they're less than 500 square feet, they were exempt anyway.
Yes, so the exemptions apply to, well, it's weird because it says additions that do not increase the footprint of a structure by more than 500 square feet. So I don't know how that applies to accessory structure.
Where we had this discussion, I said, I think we should exempt the
Alley structure.
alley
right?
structures that are historic and rated.
Yes, and I intended to add that in as
Because
well, so
can't-
thank you for that. Yes, please, and share that with the
Well,
group as to why you suggested that, Mark. I think it would be helpful for the full group
Okay.
as we move
I
towards,
won't forget.
yeah, great, excellent.
Yeah, and the thing with that is, one issue or thing to note on the wildfire code is that it actually talks about the, historic structures. So it says a variance is authorized to be issued for the repair or rehabilitation of a historic structure or construction of a contributing structure. So I guess those words repair or rehabilitation, does that fall within the context of maybe when you have a alley structure, a historic alley structure, and you are turning it into a 2-story with parking underneath and those kind of things? That's, I think, something that might be of concern.
Well, it should be addressed here. Right now, if we say just alley structures, it won't matter if they're habitable or not, I guess. If we exempt them.
Right.
I mean, I'd vote for exempting and most of them aren't. But plus, what are we gonna do? Go get some composite roof like we put on Miners Union and the Shakes and the depot and they can put on an alley structure with a corrugated roof. We're losing the whole mountain feel. So I don't know. I think if we exempt them, I'm okay, but I welcome any other board comments.
And
Agree
in,
with you. I think we should exempt them.
great.
Okay.
And in most cases, they would be exempt per the CWRC because they're small, but we want to make sure we catch all of them and that there is no chance that they're not exempt. So I will add that in, Mark. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think the issue though is they are exempt because they're small, but if that's only if it's not habitable.
Yes.
If it's habitable, so if it's converted into a secondary, living unit or something like that, then
That's a very good point as
Well,
well. So
We should
that's kind
adopt
of the issue.
alley means alley. I don't care how you use it.
great. We can certainly do that. Any other thoughts on the criteria as listed here? Again, I will add in non-contributing or designated structures, just so we're encompassing all of that. It perhaps goes a little bit beyond where the state is in their language, but that is appropriate. And we should consider the variance in all those cases because they may be potentially able to become rated structures as well through this work. So
I just was thinking about there's a house further down Columbia that has a secondary structure. I don't know the rating of it, but there is no alley. So maybe that term
good.
might not be appropriate everywhere.
Yeah, how do we describe that?
Secondary structure.
Oh, just, okay. Well,
You could say alley and secondary. structure.
alley and secondary. Let's try that.
Great.
Great.
That would
Okay.
cover.
Good catch.
You should have been to the meeting. Okay.
I don't think we have too many like that, but
That's a good
just in
catch, Bob.
case- just in case.
Does everyone feel comfortable otherwise with me moving to the next section? Okay, so standards. The permit authority, as applicable, shall consider all technical evaluations, relevant factors, criteria specified in other sections of this division, and all of the following. And again, I refined this from our subcommittee meeting, but A, the susceptibility of the historic structure to wildfire danger, the safety of access to the property for emergency response, whether the variance will result in increased fire danger and or additional threats to public safety, and whether the variance will conflict with existing local laws or ordinances. I eliminated the ones that we weren't sure about including and just put it all in this one section.
I have a question on A.
Sure.
Do we have a set of criteria that we determine what the susceptibility is?
So maybe that's a tough one. And I think that's a really
Yeah.
good point to raise. I think it's tough because this is subjective to a great extent, as we're issuing these variances. I think there are cases where that might be a useful, but I do see that I have all there and that it needs to meet all of those. So maybe it's not an appropriate place for that, and I can frame it another way that's more
Yeah, I don't
able to be implemented on.
know the answer to that one.
That's a tough one. So DA. Okay. And maybe on that too, maybe that's not one we need to include because the prior criteria cover a lot of that and the other three that are listed here. So maybe that's just more than we need to be looking at. And if you feel that way, we don't want something we can't easily review against the standards and the criteria and issue variances as needed.
I think looking at C, if say you gave a variance and you kept the historic siding, that certainly would be potentially more susceptible to being burned versus, cementitious board on it.
Would that be the
100%.
same fire danger though?
100%.
Would that be the same fire danger though? It's not necessarily increasing it if you keep the.
Well, I guess that's true. It doesn't change. You have the same fire danger there.
But this is all triggered by only if this increases.
Yeah, the addition is.
But by 25%, right? So if you're just doing something with fixing some walls, that's not gonna cost 25% of the
Okay.
square foot. What was that based on square footage addition?
Yeah, actually that 25% was just exempting any structure under
So
the
if you're not,
code.
if you're under 25% with square footage,
It's the square feet of, 25% of the surface area of exterior walls.
so then you can do what you want, trying to restore and keep the preserve the walls, but if you're doing 50%, you might fall into this.
Well, perhaps I could fix that DC by adding in, try this out, whether the variance will result in increased fire danger from existing conditions, because that's what I'm trying to get at is an increase from where we are today.
Yeah.
They're doing something that makes it worse,
Okay.
versus just keeping it as it is.
All the semantics.
But it's important to have fresh eyes, as you know, we're working in subcommittee, working at the staff
Right.
level.
Well, I know
Anything
you're
else?
working very hard on this.
Anything else jump out at you? Or, okay, so I'm gonna just move on, and then if you think of anything else, I can go backwards. So we discussed this extensively at the first subcommittee meeting and made the determination that the permit authority for issuing a variance shall be determined by the scale of the proposed project, consistent with Telluride Land Use Code Article 7. So for large scale and small scale applications, HARC will review and issue a determination on the variance concurrently with application review. B, for minor scale applications, the HARC chair will review and issue a determination. And for insubstantial scale applications, staff will review and issue a determination. And then the timing would be requests for variances shall be reviewed concurrently with project application review. Variance determination shall be made prior to CA issuance, so that they're coming in, they have to do both at the same time if they're asking for the variance, and we review it as a package. And the staff memo would speak to the variance request as well, so that it's all covered.
I think
This, I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing any of this, so I'm trying to react as I'm seeing things. This seems like this could possibly clog up the HARC queue. I mean, if we're gonna review projects they're gonna put on new siding or do a small addition, I guess
It's still the same.
it's still the same. We're gonna see it anyway. So
If it's a large project,
it's large scale.
or the chair might push it up if he feels it's.
You won't see any of the insubstantials. That staff will review all
I
insubstantial
think it's
variance
not gonna
applications.
increase- Many of these, if they're historic, are coming to the chair. They're small, minor.
Okay.
Just be
I'm
part
not-
of the
I'm not too
process.
worried about being overwhelmed. They only had 20,
Okay.
30 applications last year. But I do think, I was gonna say that when we see this final, when are we gonna see this final draft?
Sure,
Before
so
it goes to council?
basically, I think it's going to have to be, and I hope
Like,
that this can work. I'm looking to legal.
Like
I would like to send you a draft by email. We're not going to be meeting again as a full
Okay.
park board, but I do want you to have eyes on the final, which will just incorporate these comments from this evening.
Cool.
As long as you
When
feel
do we
that's an
need this?
appropriate way for me to share the final draft
The final draft.
prior to it going before town
so
council.
what's our date?
And,
Last chance to speak.
Actually, why don't we say it this way? We have the P and Z meeting next week on the 28th, and I will have to include this in that packet as the final version. So that would be the opportunity. If you have comments, I'll send it, you can send me those comments and I can bring them forth
You'll
to
send
P and
this
Z.
Revision before then.
Yeah, it'll be a clean
Okay.
copy because it has to go in their packet.
Memorial Day, I mean, but.
It'll be in the next 24
Two
hours.
things I wanted to say.
I'll get it done.
One's very short, but I
Sure.
think the theme of this to me changed versus if I saw this 3 years ago. And to me, it looks like some big city consultant, kind of wrote this up versus like a lot of consultants who haven't worked here. But I think we should go into this as lenient as we could possibly be, but respectful of life and safety. But my vision has totally changed on this. And maybe people won't agree with me that we should be even more lenient as possible. When 3 years ago or 2 years ago, the fire department changed and went from volunteer to full-time. And I'll tell you, unlike a big city, these guys, I've seen them run out of there. I walk by here all the time. They can be anywhere in 2 minutes with their truck and ladders. So to me, I'm more relaxed about it, and I'd rather be lenient on this and save trees and a few other things because the change in the fire department. I don't know. I see that as material, but that's just my. But then the last thing is C3 A through F, which is not on here because we've renumbered these, dealt with variances may only be issued upon determination that A through F happen. And I've been thinking about this. Is that in here? That's not here, is it?
It's now been synthesized into this criteria section for simplification.
Oh, okay.
And then at the
Well,
very
there
beginning, I
was-
put in the other pieces.
I'm going to just comment on that. Put
Sure.
the last sentence in there. G, what was it? G. I think that the last word in F should be or. I think it gives us more leniency to interpret this. It's not a life and safety thing, but what if there is, and we're not thinking about it, some good and sufficient cause for variance? And right now you have to meet all A through G. I'm gonna lobby for changing G is just to, or there is a good and sufficient. I'm okay with the ands. I went through a bunch of scenarios on A through F, but I think it should say, or, I'll just throw this out, there is a good and sufficient cause. And, you know, town's gonna make the decision if there was or wasn't. I just think we're boxing ourselves in a little bit too fast and no way out if there's some other cause. I don't know.
I would welcome discussion on that. At the subcommittee level, we discussed actually whether it was all or for all of them. And so what Mark's suggesting is but then or for the last one.
Just the last one.
So, you know, where you want to land.
And or?
Well, we can't say that.
You'd
That's
have to-
confusing.
You'd have to change more than that because the first sentence says all
I will,
bold.
I can fix that for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. If that's the direction you want to go in, I was putting it forth as staff as all of them. And
Straw
we can
poll,
change
just
however you'd
How many
like.
would vote for or to give us some
Doc,
latitude?
and G,
Huh? Yeah, just
G
on,
would say and, or there is a good sufficient.
okay,
cause.
and or, okay, I'll buy that. I just think that it should be, G should be kind of on its own.
I mean, Mark, the problem is that if you change it to or, you sort of really dilute A through F. If you can just go straight to G, then why have an A through F to begin with?
Well, I haven't enough time to think about what sufficient cause might not be included in A through F.
But there could be an amendment or a revision at that point. Yes. If it happens enough times, I mean, it seems like you're trying to plan for something that we don't know what it is.
I am.
Well, I know, but you can't plan for everything.
Well, that's what G does.
But then why have A through F then? If you could just do it, if you could just do or whatever, then
Well,
why have?
if you put and or, the staff can decide if they want to include G or not. They could throw it out. I just don't want to box them in. I don't know. That's,
You could make it more of a staff determination and make these as the goals.
So it'd be something that
yeah,
isn't covered in A through F.
yeah.
And I can't even think what that would be.
Well, I don't know either. But what about, well, I don't know, Matt. I don't know if they want to soften it up that much to say it's goals.
Well, there is that word shall only be issued upon a determination that all of the following criteria are met. So you could, you know, soften that a little bit by saying should only be issued, perhaps.
Or use a may provision. I guess may or shall versus shall, or
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I understand what you're trying to,
I think we go in broad and then we tighten this up as we,
but it seems kind of not wishy-washy, but it seems too vague.
I agree.
A through F or
Speaking on that point,
Yeah.
I would share that concern that if the only criteria is there is good and sufficient cause to issue a variance, that's not criteria at all. And we could find this unenforceable. So I would say that that cannot be the only criteria. G, there has to be other things that we consider besides just G in order to actually have criteria that exist to issue a variance.
Would you take G away?
I think you'd have to.
Yeah.
Well, if
But
G
it
isn't
can't
gonna
be
do it by itself.
Oh, no, no.
cross it off.
That's fine.
I don't
What
care.
do you think?
But
Take G away?
Yeah.
I don't see why I don't think it's necessary to take it away. I think if you meet A through F, there should be good and sufficient cause. That is your good and sufficient cause. So we could take G away if you think G is too vague, but I would hesitate to have G be the only criteria that something has to meet in order to get the variance.
what about and or? Doesn't that allow the staff to not use it as the sole criteria because it has both the word and the word or?
If it's an,
And staff can do that interpretation, whether they interpret it as, I'm just trying to prepare for the unexpected. I don't know what it is, Al.
Yeah.
I just, it's so fast. I mean, here we are. These guys just saw it and here we are in 10 days deciding our future of wildflower regulation. I don't know.
I would,
No more tulips are allowed, by the way.
I'll circle back. I definitely agree with Ally in terms of not having an or before G and leaving it open-ended. It would be very hard for us to review as well as the other factors that were mentioned, but I do see the flexibility you're looking for, Mark. And maybe let me think on that. Maybe there's some other way to have,
All right.
without it being just,
I'm folding my tent.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there the opportunity in the future to amend this provision
There-
anyway?
there
If it
is,
Yeah.
turns out to be unworkable or.
A lot easier to tighten it up than it is to ease off, let me tell you, my experience.
Yeah.
In municipalities.
I was,
Stuck with language, well, this has been here for 20 years,
Mm.
but you can tighten it up. Anyway, you decide.
I would say the timing to your question is we are coming back to all of you after the comprehensive plan is completed with a full land use code update. And at that time would be an appropriate time to revise anything that's not working in the code, including making tweaks to this. It's more difficult to just make little revisions because I have to bring it through town council with 2 hearings and ordinance. And so preferably it's as part of that package then, and we get something in place now we're okay with, that's gonna work.
I would suggest that you leave, this is criteria, you leave the criteria, but you get rid of the absolute language as far as shall be issued, and leave an out, whether it's in this section or somewhere else for either staff or the fire marshal or building official to make a determination if one of these things if all of them have to be met. Like
Yeah.
maybe you don't have to say all, you say these are the criteria that need to be met. You just soften up that first.
Get rid of all. So these are the criteria that need to be met.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that's a good compromise.
Okay, sounds great.
Then you want to tighten it up, you see something, then you change it back to all.
Okay. No, that sounds good. I can definitely do that. And I think
keeping G makes sense with that.
Yeah.
keeping it, okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's standard language from our other variance provisions, so that's why it's in there. And
Is that it?
finally, I think we're almost there. Obviously, after the decision determination is made, staff will give a written notice to said applicant. We'll keep records of the variances, and this is just a very light application process because again, this is going to be concurrent with your review of like a large application package for a large or small scale development. So applications for the variance piece must include a narrative describing how the proposal meets the criteria for a variance outlined in ignore C1 to C4. That's from before. We just had a subcommittee meeting. And so I'm trying to, I was trying to get everything in there as fast as I could. Drawings and material specifications. And the last thing, just to ask you if this seems appropriate to you, I moved a few things around from our subcommittee meeting based on input and hope this is a good way to do this. Emergency plan and response. In cases where a variance is granted, the applicant will be required to, so these are conditions of that approval, determine if there are steps that could be taken on the property to protect the historic structure from wildfire threat, and document advanced plans for responding to emergencies to protect the historic resource. When we issue variances, we often do condition those, so trying to leave some space there for ensuring that we're doing our due diligence to protect the historic structure because we're giving them this variance that is not bringing things up to code or up to the code, up to the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code standards. Is that workable? I guess I would ask.
I don't know,
Yeah,
but I have a question.
Sure.
So we get this all done, it'll be, the council approves it, it becomes part of the land use code. And so are we gonna have public hearings to explain to the architects and contractors?
the
This is now a
education.
big piece of this and you're gonna have to address it.
Yes, and maybe this summer, I'm actually hoping this summer
Oh.
with those who own contributing and supporting structures and so, and designated structures since we expanded the scope, but yes, we need to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right now, they don't even know that this is an opportunity. So this is a positive piece of code to support historic preservation.
I know there's been some discussion on Coda about it, I think.
Okay.
I recall, at least that this is going on.
Mm,
Yeah.
Great,
So
excellent.
you should go on and do a discussion about it.
Sure.
And it'd be nice, just education on the whole CWRC itself, what that means for applications and whatnot.
Why don't you invite her on your show and have abstain
Yeah.
from music that day and say, today we're going to talk about wildfire and not.
That's not the intent
Not gonna
of
go.
your show.
2 hours, sorry. You'd
have a revolt.
I'll give you a half an hour.
That's not gonna work. I don't think anyone would put up with that instead of music.
Blues songs about house fires.
Yeah, that's the theme.
There's my theme for the show.
All right, we're all getting punchy. I think we're
Let me
gonna
know
have
when
a
you're
good
ready.
day. So do we feel like we're in a good place? Next steps are going to be, I take what was just discussed, refine this further into the document that will then be shared at P&Z on 5/28. And then it's going to go, if you recommend it, I do need a vote to recommend that with the revisions just discussed, I can move this on to town council. That would be
Because we haven't.
preferential, because we don't have another meeting until quite a long time from now.
That's
Oh,
set up,
trust.
not
Yeah.
set up as a.
It's not set up as an ordinance, but the language.
Straw poll.
How should we do this, Ally, to make sure I get their recommendation? Can I do their recommendation by email?
So not in bulk. Each one of you can provide your recommendations individually. Just remember, open meetings, you can't discuss anything amongst yourselves via email. But if you want to solicit one by one, we can do that
I can
Now?
do
via
that.
email.
And then the question is, would I need their recommendation as a HARC board to move this on to town council? Would, and for P and Z as well?
Yes, so this does require its review and
That's what
recommendation.
I'm looking
So
for.
you don't have to affirmatively recommend. So review and recommendation really just means that you review it. You have a motion that either recommends or doesn't recommend. We just need a motion for either one in order to move it forward to town council. So you don't have to recommend it. You just have to make a recommendation for or against it.
Great,
Can we
that's what
do
I'm looking.
that?
Subject to the revisions discussed tonight.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay,
Can we do that?
Now? Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
for
it's on the
sure,
agenda. Mhm.
For sure. Or we, it is listed as a work session.
well, if it's subject to the revisions set tonight and we have a final time to review it, everybody, if somebody's got a burning desire and doesn't want to extend the meeting. then
When is
they're
this
gonna
going to
give you a comment.
It was, I can shift it. I was hoping for June 9th and June 30th.
Okay, this, so it is a review and recommendation.
So I can
So it should
wait.
be, yes. It
Okay.
needs to wait.
So then we will wait till June to
Yeah, I think
have
that-
that recommendation, and that is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Based on what you just said, you'll be able to recommend a final version at our next meeting. Thank you so much, Ally, for your guidance and direction. So that is the path forward. We will not be making changes to it at that time, because I probably will still have a work session with town council. I'll work that out with
So
Ally.
Chris, before we leave,
Yes,
we discuss, I'll leave it up to you.
great.
Did you want to just give literally a, not 50,000, 100,000 foot view of upcoming changes and process that will affect HARC?
I think, Mark,
Plain?
based on, I think what might make the most sense perhaps is for me to do that in tandem with our next HARC meeting. Unless you would like me to very high level.
Very, very high level, I think.
Very high level?
We've been hiding in the closet. working
Okay,
on
sure.
a bit about it.
Yep, nope, let me pull up my notes if you could give me one moment so that I have a reference.
Well, when Bob came out of the closet, what do you come in out of the closet?
Okay, so. Sure. So this is just very, very high level at Mark's request. I can provide a floodplain review status update. It's going to be a very brief update on the process for Town of Telluride review of projects in the flood zone AO. Here, let me stop sharing so that it's not distracting. Sorry, I'm not putting something on the
And you
screen.
don't have to go so deep and show slides. It may be-
I'm not going to. I'll just, if you want very high level, I want to make sure this is part of the staff discussion. I'm just being very transparent and sharing at a very high level. And then I'm happy to speak with anyone on the HARC board or anyone in the community anytime, one-on-one with more details. I've been trying to work my way through engaging with architects, engaging with the community. And so reach out to me if you'd like more than this high level update. But so a brief update on the process for Town of Telluride review of projects in the flood zone AO. The intention of the process, as we've defined it, is to provide a solutions-based and collaborative path forward that is based on consistent requirements and clear documentation for those reviews. The reason Mark would like me to speak to it here is because it pertains to historic projects as well. And so this is going to seem very dry, but I will go through process to be transparent. So the review process, moving forward, and again, we're giving structure and a collaborative path to frame these reviews. All projects within the AO zone must undergo third-party floodplain review moving forward. All new construction and substantial improvements in flood zone AO must demonstrate conformance with the provisions of the established town codes, regulations, and FEMA requirements pertaining to floodplains prior to building permit issuance. But there is a variance process, and we have this in our floodplain regulations, and we are giving some structure to that process, which I will spell out here. But so either you follow the code strictly and our regulations, or you may apply for a variance. The variance categories, a variance to specific provisions of the floodplain requirements may be applied for per Land Use Code 8-626 in the following categories. So the first one is contributing supporting structures, and you'll see that the language of the variance provisions in our floodplain regulations do speak to contributing historic structures. So a variance may be requested for construction of residential basements below the flood protection elevation, inclusive of residential habitable space, garages, and/or storage spaces, again, just for contributing and supporting structures. And an applicant may request the ability to calculate highest adjacent grade using the steep slope method of calculation, which I will be able to provide, just going high level here. And so there's that option on steep slopes, which gives some additional flexibility to meeting these provisions. The second form of a variance that people may apply for is that all residential construction and significant improvements in that category, broad category, a variance may be requested for construction of residential basements below the flood protection elevation, inclusive of residential garages and storage spaces, not including residential habitable space. That is only applicable to contributing supporting, and that has been standard practice over time. So this is not a change. Also, applicants can request a variance for the steep slope method of calculating highest adjacent grade. So what we're doing in sort of providing a process for review is we will be including conditions of approval with these variances. And this is to standardize, to make things consistent across all applicants who are in the AO zone who request a variance. So if you're granted a variance, there are conditions. This is the case in general, and the conditions of approval are consistent amongst all applicants. So the first condition, if you wish to be granted a variance for the below flood protection elevation, residential garages and storage spaces for the all construction category, or inclusive of the below flood protection elevation, habitable space for contributing and supporting structures, is that one, document that the first floor elevation is at or above the flood protection elevation when a residential level is proposed and or a garage or storage space below the first or ground floor. And the way you will demonstrate this as applicants is a survey confirming the existing pre-project highest adjacent grade and the boundaries of the AO zone, if the AO zone bisects the property, certified by a licensed professional surveyor, and an engineered floor plan with floor elevations meeting the aforementioned requirements stamped by a licensed professional engineer. And just to state clearly for the public, the flood protection elevation is defined as the pre-project highest adjacent grade, plus the zone AO flood depth, plus freeboard, which in the town of Telluride and the state of Colorado is 1 foot per Land Use Code 8-624A. So it's in our code, but that code provision comes from the state of Colorado floodplain regulations. Second condition of 3 is that the property owner must sign the property owner indemnification release and waiver that has been developed by our legal department following variance issuance, record it with the property, and provide a digital copy of the recorded document to the floodplain administrator prior to building permit issuance. So we did have a recording aspect of variances, but we did not have this formal format and indemnification that we are requiring. And finally, the third condition of approval, if you are requesting these additional spaces below the flood protection elevation, and not if you're asking for the adjusted highest adjacent grade, that doesn't trigger this, but the applicant must demonstrate compliance with the dry flood proofing standards of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Engineer Pamphlet EP, American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE 2424, and the National Flood Insurance Program Technical Bulletin, as confirmed by a third-party consultant. I will let you all know that I have worked very closely. I hired a third-party floodplain consultant team with expertise in this area because we needed to determine a path forward for these situations of construction in the AO zone. And the third-party consultants gave me the guidance for the floodproofing standards that would accompany our variance, which the town of Telluride is establishing that variance, which is outside of conformity with FEMA regulations and code. So I just received guidance on how to floodproof residential spaces below the flood protection elevation. But those third-party consultants will only be confirming that applicants have done so. They are not confirming any approval or any aspect of the actual variance. That's just, we're approving the variance. We have an indemnification agreement, and then we need to meet these standards and the floodproofing standards. I need support in ensuring get implemented.
Just to summarize, what it really means
Is
is
that helpful?
raft foundations, which probably 30% of the houses down, it's not that expensive, but the floodproofing using dry proofing, not wet proofing, and the architects know what that means.
Yes.
Is pretty making it flood-proof, bomb-proof. That's new. We never did that underground residential, but it will be forward. And this board will having
Yes.
weighing in.
Yes. And so you
height.
will see projects that are historic projects where, again, to be granted the variance for these aspects of the project, the first floor elevation is going to need to be correct per these requirements. And they will need to also, when they come in through the building permitting process, show that they're meeting those floodproofing standards, but their design early on should be inclusive of that. And I will be asking them to demonstrate or to have a stamped survey of highest adjacent grade before it even comes to HARC, so that we don't have, so that the process is smooth and as streamlined as possible for applicants to arrive at. If they want a variance, here's the things you need to do. Here's how we work through the process. I have very simple, straightforward one-pager for applicants of what the floodplain, what the requirements are for this variance conditions. Also, the indemnification agreement, it's like a page and a half, very succinct, and it's a package that applicants can work through. So that's sort of the heads up on where we are. And I hope that was helpful in being transparent with this board. And I will again be communicating all of this out to the broader community in this meeting now as I speak, but also in more outreach ways currently.
Right. I have a question.
Certainly.
In my previous life, before coming here, I was involved in a number of different communities where they had floodplain regulations and a floodplain map, which we have.
Yes, we do.
And in several instances, they redid or again did the map. How do I want to say this? They redid the map, and in some cases, buildings were added into the floodplain area. In some cases, they were removed. I'm wondering, are we looking at doing something like that to make sure that current situation is correct?
I can answer that in two different ways. One is individual property owners can, for their individual property, do a letter of map amendment, a LOMA, which is a process to see to remap their property in relation to its location within the AO flood zone. That is an extensive process, and I did speak with the third-party consultants to get a sense of timeline for that, and it is years because there's back and forth. There's the work on the ground, back and forth with FEMA, and the floodplain third-party consultants that are sort of giving me the guidance. They have experience doing that work, so they're like they know how long it takes. But that's something applicants looking to the future for projects could consider if they thought there might be some variation. Now, it could go either way on individual properties, so you don't know ahead of time how it'll turn out. At the broader level, I will say we are exploring, I'll say it this way, we are exploring all possibilities and being very thoughtful and doing a lot of due diligence to make a determination as to whether that would be something that should be pursued by the town. And I'm not at the point yet where I can make a recommendation on that, but it's definitely something I'm looking into and thinking very seriously about impacts and where we are today and what our map looks like in the present. But I can't speak to that, which way that, like what the decision would be on that. I'm just doing so much due diligence in all of this to make sure that we're bringing a path forward. I should also state, just so that you all hear this, clearly the town could be just going black and white, follow the code, and not have this flexibility of variances. We have done so much due diligence, done a lot of thinking. Our floodplain administrator elevated this to me for this work, to bring us on a path forward that is the balanced path, bringing all these factors into account for this unique Telluride community. So that's where we are, and that's where this is coming from.
Thank you.
Of course. I hope that was helpful.
The way to go.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
We done?
We are.
Okay, we'll officially, 7:41.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Unanimous consent.
Thank you. By unanimous consent. Straw poll, then we'll see where it's headed. Okay, back in the closet, Bob.
Okay. I can't vote on this one.